powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. Now, live from inside the Matt Black Kia Studios, this is Football at 4.
Football at 4 is powered by the Inside the Birds podcast, and it is brought to you by Caesars Entertainment Group of Atlantic City. Come experience the ultimate sports destinations all season long at the Wild Wild West, Tropicana, and Harrah's Resort Atlantic City. Book your game day experience today at Caesars.com. Geoff Mosher from the Inside the Birds podcast is here, and I would imagine, Geoff, that you are somewhat surprised at a 32-6 dismantling of the Atlanta Falcons. I don't know what you had as a pick in the game. I don't remember whether you took the Eagles or the Falcons, but I would imagine you didn't think it would be a domination.
No, I took the Falcons, Mike. I was the only person out of the four of us on our pregame show to do that, and my theory was that I felt that it was a coin flip game, and that Atlanta being the home team, and also the team that had a little bit more, obviously more experience at the quarterback, more experience at wide receiver, I felt the Eagles were the better team in the trenches, and that always gives you a chance to win. Just didn't really know what to expect. It's not that I thought the Eagles couldn't win. I just kind of gave the experience factor and the home factor of the Falcons, and boy, did that not matter at all.
No, and I picked Philly, and I had them pretty handily, mainly because of what you said, the trenches. I thought the Eagles' offensive line, and that's what I've been saying all offseason, Moses. I think their offensive line is very good. Until somebody gets hurt on that front five, they will have the better offensive line in almost every single game they play, which means they should be able to compete. But to compete, you have to have the skill players make plays. So let's get what you saw on Sunday from really Hurts. Let's start with him to make us feel better about the skill players being able to make plays. If the line plays well, what did we learn about the skill set, the skilled players?
Well, I mean, obviously, there's a lot of speed on this offense as compared to years past when, since after 2017, after Torrey Smith was traded to Carolina, they've tried to get speed, Mike Wallace and then Deshaun Jackson and drafting Jalen Reagor last year. But for injury reasons mostly, they just haven't been able to get that speed on the field, and they've had to be a two tight end offense a lot more than they've wanted to be. But now with Jalen Reagor healthy, Devonta Smith healthy, Quez Watkins in year 2 starting to be a little bit more productive, add that to that Miles Sanders, and Miles Sanders isn't just looking around by himself wondering where all the dynamic playmakers are. He's got some people among him in the wide receiver group, and I think that enabled Nick Sirianni, Shane Steichen, Kevin Petullo, the offensive brain trust, to go into this game and say, let's do our best to show as many different formations as possible. We can play 11, we can play 12, we can move guys around, we can use our running backs who have also good speed and pass catching ability, and we'll throw the kitchen sink at them from a formational standpoint. And for Jalen Hurts, the big takeaway for me, Mike, is that when you go on the road and you're making your first official start as the Eagles starting quarterback, I know he started, 4 games last year, but I think every week Doug would never say he's definitely our starting quarterback, right? So it's official. It's your first time. No turnovers. I thought that was really big. I mean, he did not put the ball in harm's way very often, made good reads, quick, accurate delivery. And again, that's a function of the offense that was designed. But the fact that he was able to, on a few occasions, get out of some trouble, make a throw on the run or throw the ball away, and no fumbles or turnovers was fantastic.
All right, let me get your thoughts on just the game that Sirianni called, the formations, the way they looked, the different looks they showed.
Yeah, and I was expecting to see a lot of different formations, but not that many different. And not just formations, but also play designs, RPOs, read option. I mean, high-low routes, crossers. You really had the whole, like I said, the whole kitchen sink there. It looked like the Eagles had more than a week to prepare for this game, which they did. But so did every other NFL team as you get trained at the end of training camp. But it felt like the Eagles were able to execute mostly everything they wanted to execute. In other words, when I watched that game, Mike, it was almost so clinical in a way. And I would say most of the time, and I haven't watched the tape yet, but it felt like Jalen Hurts, for the most part, got to get the ball to his first read when he wanted to, that it seemed like very almost Kyle Shanahan-esque in the way that everything seemed intentionally schemed and worked. You know, you watch a 49ers game, right? And it's mind-boggling just how every play seems to have somebody isolated so that they can get the ball and nobody's within 5 feet of them. So that it felt like that at times, that every button they were pushing was working, and that it was all not just the first 15 plays, but it's almost like the entire playbook was scripted there and things were just working bang, bang, bang.
Interestingly enough, you look at Sirianni on the offensive side, the defensive side of things, Jonathan Gannon's defense didn't get out of the gates nearly as crisp, but he made some adjustments and tweaks in that game. What did he do? They didn't give up points. They gave up a lot of yards in the first 2 series. But after that, how were they able to shut Atlanta down after the first 2 series?
Yeah, I'm not sure if it was more on what Jonathan Gannon did or more so what the offense did. I think the defense obviously was bend but not break for the first 2 series, and to hold them to field goals and only 6 points instead of 14 was crucial. But once the Eagles went up 15-6 in the third quarter on the Gainwell touchdown, now you're up by, or maybe it was 22-6 after that one. Once they went up double digits, Mike, that put Atlanta in a position where it couldn't just start running the ball all over them again. They really had to pass. It was not their strength. Matt Ryan was holding on to the ball at times, and at other times he was just feeling the rush. And once I felt that it became a double-digit game, it made the Falcons very one-dimensional, and that was a dimension that was easy for the Eagles to attack because, as we said, they were going to be stronger up front than the Falcons' offensive line. So they got to tee off more so. And then every once in a while, Atlanta would try to pop a run in there, and it didn't work. But I definitely think that's something we can keep an eye on more, say, this Sunday when the 49ers come to town, because they like to run, and they like to come up with run schemes that really specifically cater to the defense's weaknesses. And I don't know that much changed. I did see some guys up on the line of scrimmage in the second half, but we'll have to see how that unfolds on Sunday. That's one of the things where you're kind of, I want another week to judge that before I make any decisions.
Well, in the preseason, they were terrible against the run, and they were bad against the run for at least a half yesterday. So is that the Achilles heel that needs to be fixed?
Well, I think one thing we talked about a lot on Inside the Birds going into the year is that Jonathan Gannon was going to have to figure out a way to scheme his run defense, meaning you don't just line up and play the run. You intentionally do things, whether putting an extra guy in the line or shooting the A gap per se right at the snap, because you're trying to funnel the run in a certain direction. And it would be best for the Eagles to funnel the run to the edges, because Eric Wilson and Alex Singleton are much better at running sideline to sideline and making tackles than they are downhill. They're not downhill guys. They're not very big, and they don't get off blocks the way some of the better linebackers in the NFL do. But I guarantee you that Kyle Shanahan, as we bring this up again, is going to try to do whatever he can to get his athletic, mobile offensive linemen out into space and up into that second level to cover those guys up and run at them, because they have to prove that they can stop the run. And the 49ers can score points. The Falcons could not. So the Eagles can't just say our run defense will be reliant on us just having a lead and making the other team have to pass. They've got to be able to stop the 49ers from getting like 6 or 7 yards on first down and setting up those back-breaking 2nd and 3rd or 2nd and 4 where it's play action all day long.
Well, let me ask you this. You have Calvin Ridley, Kyle Pitts that we were all kind of waiting to see. How are the Eagles able to kind of neutralize those two? They didn't get beat with the big play at all in the game.
Yeah, obviously this is a new style of defense, and Jonathan Gannon does a lot differently on the back end than Jim Schwartz would do. He plays a lot of different coverages, including 2 safeties deep, occasionally some inverted Tampa 2, some cover 1 robber, which is when the safety looks like 2, and then the safety kind of runs to the middle to kind of patrol that area and take away that short field. So first of all, Matt Ryan didn't always know what defense he was going to be throwing at once he snapped the ball. And then secondly, he gave some protection to his wide receivers by having a safety deep. And third, when the pass rush was as good as it was against the Falcons and a bad Falcons O-line, it's really it's tough in general to get your offensive passing game going.
Yeah, I think that will be interesting to see down the road, because last year Slay had some troubles with those bigger bigger, big play wide receivers. And I thought he did a really good job with Ridley yesterday. And as you mentioned, I thought Hargrave and Fletcher Cox, those two. Cox didn't show up in the box score at all, but they had to double him, and Hargrave took advantage of it. He absolutely, and Ridgeway. I mean, Ridgeway got poor T.Y. McGill cut.
I know. How dare him? No, there was a lot of pocket pushing going on there. And look, you saw in the first quarter the respect, because I wouldn't call Matt Ryan the most athletic quarterback in the world, but Arthur Smith certainly designed a lot of plays that had Matt Ryan trying to roll to the right, roll to the left, get him on the run, which I don't know is his strength, but he knew he had to get Matt Ryan away from the interior of the offensive line, where Jalen Mayfield, the kid from Michigan, was making his first start as a rookie. He obviously struggled. So they had to kind of come up with creative ways to try to get that passing game going. And it did early on, but then it stopped. In fact, I can't remember ever watching a game. We talked about this on the pod, Mike. Maybe you would agree. I think Calvin Ridley had 4 catches on the first drive, right? And it was like bang, Calvin Ridley, bang to Calvin Ridley, bang. And then there was a sequence for the Eagles where Quez Watkins caught 3 straight balls, like bang to Quez Watkins, all screens. And then like
the first 3 plays of the game. The first 3 plays of the game were Watkins.
And then later in the game, there was that sequence where Jalen Hurts targeted Devonta Smith 4 times in a row. I've never seen like guys targeted that often, that frequently in such a cluster before, but then you almost didn't hear about him for the rest of the game. Calvin did nothing after that. Quez Watkins didn't do anything after that.
Yeah, but I'll tell you what, Jeff, the Quez Watkins thing, I really was impressed by, because I love the way that he said, I'm going to go to Watkins 3 times. It made you have to account for him the rest of the game, like because of his speed, that if he just goes streaking down the seam, you had to pay attention because, he's in the game plan. We have to pay attention. They never went back to him, but that's like something that they could shelf and use, 2-3 weeks down the line where we don't show, and then boom. So I love that they went to, it was like, of all guys, Watkins gets the first 3 plays, but I think there was a method behind that madness.
I also think, I think they started off in the hurry up too, just like Atlanta did. So they clearly found a defensive look that they felt a swing pass to Watkins was good for, and then they hurried it up, and then Atlanta gets right back in defense. They're playing the same look, so we're going to do it again. It's almost like we're going to do this because you're in a look that you can't stop this.
Yeah.
And then obviously eventually the clock stops, or there's an incompletion, and they get to substitute and things change. But I agree with you that it loosened up the Atlanta defense at first, and then they had to kind of respect that speed and on the quick swing pass for the whole game.
Well, and they went with the first play call of the game is the play they use against Pittsburgh, and it was like, look, accentuate the positives. Like, how many times were you saying, like last year, it seemed like the Eagles' offense was, John Hightower, just run straight down the field and let's see if we can air one out. And look, they didn't take any shots down the field from my recollection yesterday. Everything was a little too safe almost. I don't want to say too safe. That sounds like a negative, but they didn't take very many shots, if any, yesterday, whereas last year, all they did was take shots, and it's like, you got these guys that can work well in space and didn't utilize them. So that was what I liked.
Yeah, no, I agree with you on that. I thought that there was probably more formational variety in the first quarter of yesterday's game than there might have been all of last year. And you're right, it was opposite in that there was not a lot of vertical presence to the game. It seemed like the coaches, the team, the whole concept was we can move the ball horizontally against this defense and just kind of march up and down the field using everybody at our disposal. I mean, the deepest pass, I think, went to Zach Ertz. So they were able to do that, and it worked. But I would tend to agree with you, not to attach a negative connotation to it, but obviously, as you go on,
it wasn't necessary.
When you have opportunities to drive the ball, you're going to have to do it. Yeah.
Right? It wasn't necessary to take your shot. So shelve those plays for another week. You know what I mean? Like,
right.
I don't have to use play action, because we saw like no play. We saw RPOs, but nothing, really play action wise and setting things. I think they used this week to set things up in weeks down the road because the game kind of got away from Atlanta. There was something else. I thought the running back tandem, Sanders, and I think we found out that Kenneth Gainwell's your other guy.
Yeah, we've been saying that on Inside the Birds for a while, that as long as Kenneth Gainwell showed in training camp, in OTAs, that he could handle the workload, understand the base offense, understand the installs, not put the ball on the floor, do what he's supposed to do, he's going to get a role, because we knew how much the coaches liked him. We knew what kind of characteristics they like in a running back like him, and that they would use that opportunity to get him on the field early. I've been saying it all season long. He will be on the field early in the year as long as he can handle it, and he has handled it, and he is right now the number 2, and he is going to be used, and he is being used the way the Colts used Nyheim Hines. That's his role.
Talk with Geoff Mosher from the Inside the Birds podcast. Eagles win 32-6. The offensive line was absolutely dominant. I want to get your thoughts on the Mailata contract, and good move, bad move. Did they jump the gun on this? How did he play? Give me your overall view, because I had people like, this was a terrible wild. They needed to wait to see more of him. This is a classic Eagles move, though. Identify young talent, sign him early. The problem is this guy's going to be so good that 2 years from now he's going to be saying I'm underpaid.
You're absolutely right, and that's why he only signed, I'm guessing, a 4-year deal. I'm guessing that's why it was only offered, because he's got a short sample of playing in the NFL. So he will have an opportunity to get another contract in 2 years if he makes 2 Pro Bowls. But at that point, I think the Eagles even understand that if that's the case, that they would have to they've done that before. They've done it with Lane Johnson. They've done it with other players that when they look like they're young and ready for a second or a third contract, they'll give you more money to make you, commensurate with what the market is, especially when you're young and you're on an offensive lineman. They treat those guys really well. So we'll see in 2 years. Look, I think it's one of the moves that if someone says it's a terrible deal, they may not necessarily be wrong. I mean, at the end of the day, they may be right. And if someone says this is a great deal, at the end of the day, they may be right. It's just impossible to look into the crystal ball and figure out what this guy's value is. Mm-hmm. It's just, there's no comps to it, right? A 7th-round pick who's a starting left tackle and a really good one. I mean, I'm sure it's happened before, but I don't know if you look at all the
Jason Peters was undrafted, now. Right? I mean, this happens. Right, there's guys who, offensive linemen, but there's a guy who played no football, zippo, zero, nada.
Right. Yeah, that's what makes it such a unique negotiation. So you can say the Eagles gave up too much, but the bottom line is, what if he plays really well this year? This is his 4th year. It's his contract year. So if he was playing really well for the first 10 or 11 weeks, he might say, well, now I'm just 5-6 weeks away from free agency and someone's going to pay me, $200 million. Or you're holding the Eagles to the fire saying, look, this guy's going to make this much in free agency. You had a chance to wrap him up earlier for about 10 to 15 million a year less. Now you got to pay the piper. So every contract extension for a young rising player is like that. People thought the Carson Wentz contract was really good when he signed it. Some people did. Some people thought it was also awful. But the reason why people thought it was good was because you're only paying him $26 million a year when Dak's about to go make $40 million. So that's $15 million less, right? Yeah. It looked good at the time. Now it doesn't. I mean, you just never know.
The Eagles are big on identifying the young player and trying to get them under control before they really can make money. That was the Andy Reid era, and you had guys holding out because they thought they were underpaid. Brian Westbrook and Sheldon Brown and like a lot of these players were like, hey, I'm underpaid. Well, you signed that contract 2 years ago. You shouldn't have signed it. And that's it.
They changed the rules
because
of that.
Exactly. Geoff Mosher from the Inside the Birds podcast. That being said, the offensive line was, other than the penalties, you can win with that offensive line, right?
I don't see why not. I mean, I know that the Falcons don't have they're not loaded with pass rushing talent. Grady Jarrett's a good player. And, there were times that he gave them a little bit of trouble. But for the most part, they ran the ball effectively. They threw the ball with protection. I think Jalen Hurts was sacked once. So was he sacked?
I think
he was sacked once. Oh, no, maybe 0 times. So he wasn't under duress
One time.
One time. Okay. Right. So,
and by the way, I think it was
sacks.
Yeah, the Jarrett, that was early in the game, too, where Jarrett kind of pressured him. He went out of bounds.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Well, wait a minute. That shouldn't have been a sack.
No, that wasn't the sack.
Bounds,
that was one.
Oh, okay.
That was one where you were right. That Jarrett beat
Lane.
Johnson was kind of up and down.
Yeah, I mean, look, you can definitely knock him for the holding penalties, and maybe in the fall starts, maybe that's the lack of preseason time showing up or being on the road in a first game. Working on a silent count, there could be a whole lot of different reasons for that. Yeah. But as far as protection and blocking, they checked all the boxes.
let me tell you.
For 1 week.
Seeing Brandon Brooks, Jason Kelsey, Brandon Brooks, Lane Johnson out there was a breath of fresh air. Seeing those guys. I thought Seumalo played pretty well. He had a couple penalties himself, but Seumalo and Mailata together on that side could become, because I thought Seumalo played pretty well when he wasn't getting penalties.
Well, allow yourself to think about this, even though we should all just take it one day at a time. But Jordan Mailata is 380 pounds, not 360 as he's listed. He's 380. And there's going to be a point where Landon Dickerson's going to get in this game. And maybe it's at left guard because either Seumalo gets hurt or Seumalo is playing center and Jason Kelsey's not. I don't know. But there's going to be a time where you got a 380-pound Jordan Mailata and a 55-pound Landon Dickerson next to each other, putting a combo block on some defensive lineman who's about 302 on a good day or 310, right? That's going to be interesting to see.
Well, I'll tell you what, Moshe, it's funny you say that because earlier today I said, the young skill players with this aging offensive line, they're going to start having to replace Lane Johnson, Brandon Brooks, Jason Kelsey. Now, you got Dickerson. He's going to replace somebody, but you're going to have to start infiltrating younger offensive linemen to go with these skill position players. For this year, it might just be a pretty good storm.
Well, they're high on Jack Driscoll. He's on IR with a broken hand. He'd be a top backup right now at guard and tackle. I don't know if Nate Herbig is somebody they see as a starter, but I do think they see Jack Driscoll. They see starting potential, and he had a nice camp. He played well last year toward the end of the year as he started to get more time. I get it, he was a rookie picked in the 4th round, but there's no doubt in my mind, unless they make more moves in the draft, which is always possible with all the picks they have, but that they view Landon Dickerson certainly, and I think very favorably they view Jack Driscoll as a potential interior offensive lineman going forward.
Real quick, thoughts on Devonta Smith?
Oh, man. You know what he said after the game was like, somebody asked him, when did you know you were going to get a touchdown? And he said, as soon as we lined up. And so I saw man-to-man. And you just love that kind of attitude. Did a nice job. Caught the ball when it was thrown to him. There was a couple in traffic, too, where, he absorbed a hit. Got up. Everything's good. Look, he's about as smooth of a route runner as I've seen from an Eagles rookie wide receiver, God, maybe ever. I mean, I'm trying to think of the rookies that came in and had route running ability like that. Jason Mott was pretty good. Deshaun was not the type of guy who ran 6 or 7 different routes to perfection. He was a deep ball guy. Jeremy Maclin was a pretty good route runner, but coming out of that Missouri spread, I think not in the same echelon as Devonta Smith as a rookie route runner. So it's been really impressive to see and very unique to see.
All right, week 1 in the books, and the guys over at the Inside the Birds podcast have plenty more on this. Check out the Inside the Birds podcast, Apple Store, Google Play, wherever you get your podcasts, or Google Podcasts, Apple, whatever they're called. You know where you can get them, wherever you listen to a podcast. If you don't know where you listen to a podcast by now, that's on you. I'm a Google guy. I get mine in the Google podcast area. Geoff Mosher, at Geoff Mosher NFL. Check out his 10 observations on the Eagles over at InsideTheBirds.com. Tomorrow, Andrew DeCecco's thoughts on Kenneth Gainwell's role in this offense. Check that out for tomorrow's Football at 4. All right, Moshe, week 1, man. It's in the books. It goes fast.
It certainly does. I'll talk to you Wednesday.
All right, that's Geoff Mosher. He will be back on Wednesday from the Inside the Birds podcast. And, of course, Football at 4 is brought to you by here on the Sports Bash each and every day at 4 o'clock. We talk NFL. It's brought to you by Caesars Entertainment Group of Atlantic City. Come experience the ultimate sports destination all season long at Wild Wild West, Tropicana, and Harris Atlantic City. Book your game day experience now at Caesars.com.